with that, we're going to our final speaker before the break. So our next speaker, Randy Shoup, is a VP of Engineering and Chief Architect at eBay. His career has been amazing. He spent more than 3 decades building distributed systems in high-performing teams. He has worked as a senior technology leader, currently at eBay, prior to that at Google, Stitch Fix, and other places. And beyond what I said, building like distributed systems and high-performing teams, he has also taken to coaching CTOs and advising companies with his extensive experience. Therefore, he's in a perfect position to share his learnings on how to move fast at scale. Please all join me in welcoming Randy to the stage.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, thanks for that great welcome, Philip. Today, I am VP of Engineering and Chief Architect at eBay. I'm Randy Shoup, and I want to talk to you today about moving fast at scale. So like Philip said, I've been a senior engineering leader at eBay, at Google, at Stitch Fix, and at WeWork. And I'm going to tell you some of the lessons of engineering leadership that I've learned over my 3 decades in my career. I want to talk about moving fast at scale in 3 different lenses. So the first, I want to talk about culture, what we can do as engineering and product leaders to build a really good culture. I want to talk about how to organize ourselves, particularly at what Prashant was just calling the late stage as opposed to the earlier mid stage. And then I want to finally talk about practices that are going to help us scale over time. So let's begin by talking about culture. So sort of no conversation about moving fast in this moment would be replete without talking about the Accelerate book. So, 3 years ago, great work from the State of DevOps report and led by Nicole Forsgren talking to us about how high-performing engineering organizations do their jobs. So if you've never read that book, I recommend that you sort of pause this video, go read it and come back. But seriously, one of the main focuses that the book talks about is about organizational culture. And they define 3 different kinds of organizational culture along Ron Westrom's foundational work in this area. So the first, the kind that you want to be, is a generative culture, which is characterized by trust and sharing. So when there are problems, people raise them. When there are issues, people solve them. When there are solutions, people collaborate around them. The middle ground is sort of a bureaucratic culture, which is characterized by rules and processes. And, this is the kind of engineering or product culture where we do it this way because we've always done it this way, and, don't ask too many questions. The place you really don't want to be, and I'll say I have had this experience personally in my life, is a pathological culture where everything is characterized by fear and threat. So people are afraid to raise issues. They're afraid to suggest new ways of doing things because if they fail, they're going to either be humiliated or fired. These are not just like nicer to be in as an employee or as a leader, like these directly lead to better engineering outcomes and better business outcomes as well. So let's talk about what does a generative culture really mean. So the first thing that I want to talk about is something called psychological safety. So Google, being Google, studied itself. And a bunch of years ago, they shared the results of that research. And what they found, what they were trying to do was decide what predicted high-performing teams at Google versus lower-performing teams. And you can imagine their hypothesis was something like, the higher-performing teams have more PhDs, or like are from fancier universities, or have been longer at Google. Turns out none of that stuff matters. The biggest predictor of team success was what was called psychological safety. So what does that mean? That means the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. In other words, as an employee or a member of the team, I'm able to bring my whole self to work without fear of negative consequences. And when I say whole self, I mean a couple of different aspects. I mean all aspects of my diverse experience as a human. So, my gender, my race or ethnicity, where I'm from in the world, but also being able to bring my maybe crazy ideas, right? So are junior people on your team able to like contribute and suggest new ideas and have everybody think more broadly about them? So and why does this matter? Why was this more important than any other factor in team success? It's because you're getting 100% out of everybody on the team rather than, people spending 25% or 50% of their, mental energy trying to avoid, being humiliated or being made to feel bad, or thinking twice about, will I be embarrassed if I share this idea and it doesn't work out? So psychological safety is a huge predictor of team success, and it's our job as leaders to make sure that that exists in our teams. A related notion is what's called inclusive decision making, and the key insight here is as we improve the diversity of the team that's making decisions, our decision making actually improves. And so the study linked at the bottom shows that when we have gender diversity, age diversity, and geographic diversity, those teams make better business decisions 87% of the time versus everybody who looks like me. They also make those decisions twice as fast with half the meetings. And so, at the end of the day, they deliver 60% business results. So it's not just a nice idea to be bringing more diverse perspectives into our teams. It actually helps us move more quickly and generate better business results. And the insight here, again, is comes from this Japanese proverb, which is quoted here by Bob Taylor, who used to run the Xerox PARC Research Lab, where they invented all of modern computing in 1973. None of us is as smart as all of us. Okay, so that was talking about culture. Now I want to talk a little bit about organization. And again, what we can do as engineering leaders to improve, make our organizations run really well. So this is my little quip. Maybe people have heard this quip about models. This is my quip about organizations. I think all organizations are wrong, but some are useful. So why are all organizations wrong? It's because there's really a multidimensional problem around people coordinating and working together with each other. But most organizations are a single dimensional slice through that multidimensional problem. So every organization, is partially wrong, but a lot of them are pretty good. And I'm going to talk to you about the pretty good ones. So again, a great reference, which you should totally read, is this wonderful new book called Team Topologies. And it explains four different types of teams, how they interact with one another, and how they can help to improve organizational goals. So what are the goals of organizations? Why do we have organizations at all? It's because we want to sustainably deliver value to our business and to our customers. It's because we want to optimize for fast flow of change and rapid feedback from the business and from customers. And most importantly, we want to minimize the team cognitive load. In other words, in order for a team to go fast, they need to be able to laser focus on their particular area and not think as much about the stuff that isn't in their main area because it's being taken care of by other teams or something like that. So in traditional organizations, when I started in the industry over 30 years ago, the way that organizations were done was in this waterfall process. So like there was some idea team, which we might call the business or product teams, and they threw their big 1,000-page spec over the wall to well-paid typists like I was, the developers, and we typed furiously into our editors, and then we, committed, and then we sent that, code over to a quality team, which tried to decide, whether the code did what we hoped it would do. And then they threw it over to operations teams, which would run it in production. Like this is a very old style way of doing things. And we've learned a way, over the decades, we've learned a better way to do it. In the team topologies framework and in their wording, the way to do it is what are called stream aligned teams. So a team that's actually at the top level of your organization touching customers, they should have all those parts of idea and development and quality and operations all together. That team is aligned around a customer or business problem. And the way that they measure their own success is through clear goals and metrics that matter to customers. So we think about, are we reducing customer churn? Are we improving the customer's ability to go through this particular flow, et cetera? Clear goals and metrics that are expressed in a customer-oriented language. And at a larger scale company, you don't just have one of these teams, you have many. So each of those teams in our individual domains, like imagine eBay. So we have teams that work on the selling side of the business, teams that work on the buying side of the business, teams that work on the search side, the payment side, et cetera, et cetera. all of those teams in a well-functioning organization are full stack. So they have the responsibility for idea, for development, for quality and operations. Why do we do this? Is so that those teams can iterate very, very quickly, independently of one another. Let's figure out, one might think that the easiest way to have teams iterate faster is to have them have their own stack all the way down to the bottom. It turns out that does allow the teams to be independent, but it doesn't allow the teams to be very efficient. So a much better way of organizing, as much larger companies have done, is more this way. So you'll have these stream-aligned teams along the top that are producing that customer value. You'll have a bunch of intermediate services that each individually serve one or several or maybe all of the domains at the top. You'll have a set of platform services at the bottom, and then you'll also do communities that sort of work across the organization that are aligned around languages or frameworks or something like that. Let me tell you a little bit more about what I mean here. So the first I want to talk about is the service organization. So people maybe are familiar with Conway's Law. Mel Conway in 1968 proposed this idea that the organization that we have is reflected directly in our architecture. And so the architecture that we want is small units of work, small sets of services, each of which are owned by a particular team. And then we just construct our larger organization out of a bunch of those individual teams. The idea here is that we want the teams to be organized such that they can independently design, develop, deploy, and operate their services, and that those teams own those services end to end. So like from the design phase all the way through to the operation and to the retirement phase. And this is how we organize large scale stuff. So this is how Google works, Amazon works, eBay works, Netflix works. All of the large organizations that we look up to, they all organize themselves in this way. That's built on top of typically a common platform. So that platform has, a bunch of shared infrastructure. And, at places like Google, that's built internally. At a bunch of other places, they leverage, the cloud produced by, let's say Google or Amazon or Microsoft or something like that. The common platform typically provides developer experience capabilities like source control, development and testing environments, continuous delivery pipelines, et cetera. That common platform provides common capabilities like authentication or secrets management or observability or alerting, and then also usually provides a bunch of standard frameworks upon which all the stream-aligned teams are built. So something you might call a service chassis, or like the underlying core part of building services, communication protocols, data formats, all that kind of stuff. This is all part of the common platform. And then I also mentioned that sort of cross-cutting concerns around what we'll call communities or communities of practice. And, typically at large organizations, those are organized around particular language frameworks or ecosystem, because like all the Node developers or all the Java developers, even though they work in different domains, have a lot of common concerns and can share ideas. They're sometimes organized around specialized roles like security or something like that. They might be organized around particular sets of consumers of a particular common service or platform, and they might be organized around common techniques or practices. And then you can imagine there's lots of different ways to collaborate. So, we just heard Prashant telling us about Stack Overflow. That's a great way to collaborate. At eBay, we also use Slack channels, common groups and mail lists, periodic meetings among those communities to share ideas, and sometimes even go so far as internal conferences. So that was about the organization. And finally, I want to tell you about some of the practices that I think are worthwhile working at a large scale. So in traditional organizations, you can imagine if I have, 5 people on my team and I have obviously more than 5 things I want them to do, I'm going to have the first person work on the first feature, the second person work on the second feature, the third person work on the third feature, and so on. This seems like a pretty obvious way to organize your work, and it's actually pretty common. Turns out we can actually do better because if to the extent that we have a prioritized list of the things that we want to work on, we actually would probably like to get the top priority thing done earlier. So what if we, and the way I like to think about this is fewer things, more done. Or if you want to use lean terminology, this is limit work in progress. So here's a better way of organizing. So instead of one person per task, and it takes a couple of months to get the task done, what if we put a couple of people on the most highest priority thing, a couple people on the second priority, and so on. But this looks good because now we've gotten those highest priority things done in half the time, and we've often two people that are working together can help each other move forward when they get stuck. But I think we can do even better. So now we want to add in the concept of developing and releasing iteratively, so more continuous delivery capabilities. So now instead of having that two team like think, or type, and then 2 months later release something, what if we figure out iterative ways that we can release things along the way, get customer feedback, provide interim value to customers, and that allows us to potentially change the path if we learn something. And so this is a much better way to do it. And the higher performing teams and organizations are doing this right now. It also makes you resilient to this. So it is very common. In fact, it's almost, a standard thing that happens in our industry where we're working on something. We're maybe not all the way done, but then we get some change in priority. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is if we have done a whole bunch of the work and we get no value out of it. So the idea of like releasing iteratively means that even if we change priorities, later on in the cycle, we've still released a customer value along the way and provided value and also learned things. So let's summarize. If we do this kind of fewer things, more done, or limiting work in progress approach, here's what we do. So we've delivered the highest priority features first, and we're not implicitly treating, priority number 1 and priority number 5 the same. We've delivered the full value of those features earlier, right? Time value of money. So the benefit that we got by releasing that first thing, in half the time benefits us and benefits our customers. We've delivered incremental value along the way instead of like waiting and only delivering it in one big chunk at the end. And also, we've delivered that value despite the fact that we live in a changing environment and we might have changing priorities. At any point, we have working software and we could stop at any time. So this is pretty exciting. And again, these are the kinds of practices that the high-performing organizations do. Okay. So we talked about high-performing culture, moving fast. We talked about high-performing organization, and we talked about high-performing practices. Just as a quick thing, I'm an engineering leader, but this stuff has implications not just for engineering leadership, but actually for our companies. So again, according to the research in the Accelerate book, which I suggest that you read, the companies that do these practices don't just produce better engineering outcomes, they produce better business outcomes. They are 2.5 times more likely to exceed their company goals around profitability, market share, and productivity. So if you care about those things as an engineering or product or business leader, then you should be trying to do this kind of stuff. So thank you very much. I think we might have some time for questions, but thanks for your kind attention, and it was great to be here.
Thank you so much, Randy. That was really great. I'm sure you managed to get quite a few books sold on behalf of other authors, of course. So I'll definitely give it. I'll definitely give Accelerate a read. Very, very, very fantastic. And yeah, I think thank you so much for the time. Unfortunately, we don't have an opportunity here to take questions, given the audience is in the other main room and in the hop-in session, so we can't take live questions here easily right now. But nevertheless, thanks a ton for the very, very great talk, and we hope to have you back next year in person in Transylvania for this conference and can hear what other exciting things you're up to.
I look forward to joining you in Transylvania. Thank you.